learners, welcome to the course BSW 041 Understanding Tribals. I hope you would have gone through the course structure. Now, this week, let us go through the Unit 1 Tribal Studies, its evolution, nature and scope. Before going into the unit, first of all, we should know the meaning of scheduled tribe. Scheduled tribe is generally known as Adivasis, a heterogeneous set of ethnic and tribal groups. They are the aboriginal or indigenous population of India. They are the most backward classes socially, educationally, economically in India. They constitute nearly 8% of India's total population. Therefore, the aim of the government of India is trying to bring these tribes at par with the rest of the population in the country in terms of mainstream development. Now, in this unit, the learner would try to understand the evolution and genesis of tribal studies in India, and also he will develop an understanding of the tribes, their problems and issues affecting the development process in India. The learner would also acquaint with the field of tribal studies and how it influences the development process to gain an insight into development perspective with regard to tribes and those residing in the far-flung areas. As I mentioned earlier, the tribals are the most backward classes and the poorest of the poor among the weaker sections. We also know that they have their own distinct system of culture, social structure, polity, economy, education, etc. In the age of modernization and globalization, they are far behind in every spheres, namely education, health, polity, etc. Therefore, there is a need to develop tribes in education, health and other programs at par with the rest of the population in India. After independence, India started focusing welfare and development activities in tribal areas, but not much success. Therefore, it is necessary to study tribals in Indian context. The social anthropology is a discipline which helped to a great extent to study tribals in India. Presently, efforts have been made to empower the tribals through various projects and plans. They have been involved in various projects as stakeholders, and their participation is ensured by the Government of India and other state governments. So, there is a need to train and orient them towards the technological advancement and development initiatives of the government, and they should be involved in training, research, extension, documentation and dissemination for their betterment. In tribal studies, there are several qualitative appraisals are being conducted to understand their limitations. As a result, some issues have been identified related to tribals. Firstly, they lacked organizations in groups and hence they live in isolation. They had no access to credit or resources. They lacked education, vocational training and skills to earn livelihood. Adequate medical facilities were not available, leading to high mortality. There is lack of good roads for speedy transportation. In this unit, tribal studies can be discussed under the 6 broad areas: the meaning and concept of tribal studies, evolution and genesis of tribal studies, nature of tribal studies as a discipline, relevance of tribal studies in Indian context, and the challenges ahead. Now, let us look at the concept of tribal studies. The concept of tribal studies emerged in the colonial period in India. It is a part of anthropology studies and it is an interdisciplinary in character. It can be understood in the process of integrating history, political sciences, economics, social work, sociology and anthropology to study tribal in the present day context. It can be broadly understood by the concept of rationality of Western ideology that broadened the scope through the study of tribal community. It is strengthened to understand the issue relating to tribal development from different angles in this era of globalization. According to Andre Betteley, people having their own dialects that separates them from non-tribes practice and follow their own religion and beliefs which are common in Hinduism. Language is a criterion of difference as tribes speak their local dialect For example, Mundas and Orans of Chota Nagpur speak different dialects, but Bhumij have lost their tribal dialect and speak dominant language of the area. Max Weber emphasized that social structure where when an Indian tribe loses its territorial significance, it assumes the form of an Indian caste, but tribe is a local group whereas caste is a social group. D. N. Mazumdar, he also says that the tribe come across Hindu ritualism as foreign and extra religious even though pander to it as in the worship of god and goddess, whereas in the caste they are necessary part of the religion. The term tribes is used as synonymous of indigenous people. It includes the people, communities and nations who claim historical continuity and cultural affinity with societies predating contact with Western culture. Indigenous people include aborigines, aboriginal people, native people, first people, fourth world cultures and autochthonous. Indigenous people is the most recent and neutrally worded term, and it is the preferred term in use by the United Nations and its subsidiary organizations. The tribal studies undertake extensive studies on tribals and their problems with the sole object of supplementing the efforts of Government of India and the state governments in the sphere of socio-economic development of tribals in this area of their dominance. The main objectives of tribal studies are to formulate and undertake projects and programs on tribal studies and research for promotion of tribal art, culture, tradition and heritage and their preservation and promotion, to undertake projects for improving agricultural and horticultural productivity of tribal people, to organize training programs for economic empowerment of the tribal people, particularly tribal women, and organize various seminars, workshops, conferences on the problems and issues of the tribal people and disseminate the same. Now, let us look at the evolution and genesis of tribal studies. As you know, that tribal study is a part of anthropology. During the pre-independence India, the colonial realm had given emphasis to study the tribal with the aim to help their administrative functions and religious conversion. Many colonial rulers had tried to document their culture, social structure, beliefs and value system of the society. In fact, they had only conceived the term tribal studies, but they did not show much academic interest for the growth and development of tribals. After independence of India, many universities were established to expand the higher education. Anthropology was one of the important subjects of specialization in higher education. As a result, over the period of time, tribal study has become one of the important areas of anthropology discipline. As you know, Government of India has recognized welfare and development as an important intervention for overall development of tribals. Therefore, various government and non-government organizations have shown interest in research on tribals and highlighted the various problems that exist in their society. During the period of 1990s, many Indian universities have established the Department for Tribal Studies. For instance, the establishment of Tribal Studies Department at Hampi, Himachal Pradesh University in the year 1994, Kannur University in the year 1996, the Council of Analytical Tribal Studies, Koraput, Orissa in the year 2002 were established with the support of Government of India and University Grants Commission. These departments do undertake research studies on tribal art, culture, traditions and their traditional medicinal system with a view to recognize their richness and relevance. Besides these, research studies have also contributed towards formulation of a national policy for tribal development and also helps to formulate schemes and programs for tribal welfare and to evaluate the schemes and programs for further improvement. These studies also highlight the impact of rapid growth, process of modernization and globalization of the world economy on the tribal life. Anthropologists and other social scientists are being engaged in scientific studies based on intensive fieldwork. These studies also address various issues concerning tribal development, development issues, transition and change, changing cultural patterns, social network, the concept of tribal society, migration and tribal health and so on. As a result, the tribal study has aided in development and strengthening of knowledge and broadening the scope of social anthropology. Various core areas of social sciences like sociology, anthropology, political sciences, economics, social work, etc. have developed research and theoretical base on tribal life. But much more efforts needs to be put forth to strengthen the development of tribal studies as an independent discipline. During the last century, many Indian universities have started tribal study as a discipline under which master degree, MPhil and PhD degrees are conferred to the students. Now let us look at the nature of tribal studies. As I have already explained, the tribal study is a part of the subject of anthropology. It is a systematic and critical investigation of tribal life, and it is an interdisciplinary in nature and approach. From psychology point of view, tribal study deals with behavior of tribal through detailed study of feeling, reacting, thinking, etc. From the point of socio-cultural dimension, it looks into the tribals as isolated from the mainstream culture, society, polity and economic activity. It is interesting to note that tribal study emphasizes on critical research of their society, culture, various traits and attributes, social norms, various practices in their daily lives, etc. It may be noted that tribal society is highly heterogeneous with various subgroups having their differential and unique social, cultural patterns and system. As such, to know every detail about them is a great challenge, but also crucial to uplift them at par with the people of the mainstream. There is a need to understand the uniqueness and differences among various tribal communities through the research angle, but it requires systematic structure of investigation. Now let us look at the various characteristics of tribal study. As you know that the tribal study is a new field of study. Now let us see what are the salient features of tribal study. These are objectivity, precision, design and verifiability. Now let us see all these characteristics in detail. The first is objectivity. Tribal study is a field of study about the tribals and their culture, society, norms and values, etc. It makes deliberate efforts to eliminate personal preference, resisting the temptation to seek only such data that supports the hypothesis. The emphasis on how tribal people interpret their world rather than testing hypotheses. Objectivity is achieved through standardization of research instruments, choosing appropriate research design and analytical tools and ensuring dependability of data. Second characteristics, this is very important, precision. Precision can be achieved through the proper uses of statistical methods and techniques in tribal studies. As we know, the conclusion of any study is conveyed to the readers are the most precise expression in quantitative research which explains the truth. Precise language describes the study accurately so that the results may be understood correctly in the field of tribal study. The third characteristic is another important one, design. In tribal study, specific research design is carried out to investigate. The following steps involved in scientific investigations are defining of the problem, statement of the hypothesis, collection of data and analysis of data, testing and confirmation or rejection of hypothesis, reporting of the results. However, many scholars and academicians maintain that qualitative research design is preferred over the quantitative one while undertaking tribal studies. Qualitative approach focuses on understanding the perceptions and interpretations of tribal people rather than highlighting materials, cultural facts. As you know, both qualitative and quantitative approaches have advantages and disadvantages. Therefore, researchers should know where, when and how to deploy an appropriate tool for investigation. Thus, design of research is very important in tribal studies. And the fourth one, another important characteristics, that is verifiability. It is a vital element in tribal study. It, it follows the research methods and findings presented to the professional community to analyze, conform or reject them in social research. As we know, research is a social enterprise and its information is open for public scrutiny. The verifiability is related to the criteria of objectivity and precision. Through further investigation or replication of studies, the results of a single study be confirmed or revised. Verifiability is achieved through various approaches, namely analyzing the same data on the same sample through alternative analytical tools, that is statistical methods, and replicating the study on a different sample. Thus, all above discussed four characteristics are important to understand the nature of tribal studies. Now, moving on to the tribal studies, how it has emerged as a discipline. Let us see in detail. During colonial periods, the study of tribes carried self-image of the researcher into it, and gradually it established ideological base over a period of time and built upon the notion of the racial superiority. In the era of modernization, the tribal studies have been used mainly in the perspective of development and human rights. According to Singh, in the year 1991, the overall tribal study is in fact proportional method to study culture, considering the religion as syncretism, including micro-studies to understand the modification of human behavior in a perspective of diverse reality. It is stated otherwise approval to diversities, pluralism, etc. Studies of the tribal people have significantly improved our understanding of Indian pluralism. In the 1950s and in the year 1960s, it was the study of tribal societies that has made us aware of our diversities. Malinsky emphasized that the mentality and attitude was reflected both in words and actions. Tribes were tagged as primitive, savage, etc., and converted to Christianity, what the civilized people thought of as means and ends of civilization. In the post-colonial periods, the mindset of superiority is no more given a free ride in the study of tribes. The involvement of the tribal scholars has developed the interest in them in their own studies and accommodating the perspective as they feel right for them. There was a gap with the tribal and non-tribal scholars who studied tribes from a different perspective from the one which was the core of colonial understanding of the tribes. In the era of globalization, tribal studies have not remained in the restricted domain of anthropologists. Almost all disciplines of social sciences have shown the interest in tribal studies in academics. Various analytical tools of disciplines have been applied to tribal studies, thereby expanding the frontiers of tribal studies and at the same time incorporating interdisciplinary character into the discipline. For example, a social worker, while intervening in poverty of tribals, is required to study the social and cultural aspects of the tribals in order to have a deeper insight into the problem for which the intervention is required. He combines his social work knowledge and theory with an anthropological insight to the study. The discipline of tribal studies have been developed by the scholars from Western countries and based on the Western concept of rationality. They ignored various indigenous concepts such as irrational in the research and actions. The early scholars did not find any rational justifications to most of the practices in tribal communities. This has led to the evaluation of tribal communities as backward within the expansion and recognition of the knowledge base beyond Western concept of rationality. The Western oriented scholars considered those as primitive thoughts and practices. The tools and approaches from social science disciplines applied to tribal studies usually enrich the knowledge by dispelling many misconceptions about tribes and their culture. Sometimes scholars of a discipline address an issue within the disciplinary boundary, focused objectives, but study is viewed and compared with studies of other disciplines, then the study in question presents wider perspectives beyond the discipline outline. Through the involvement of interdisciplinary nature, the methodological support deepened the tribal studies. The tribal studies as a discipline is becoming holistic in approach. The tribal life is better understood in relation to other aspects of tribal life that define the culture of tribe as a whole. The whole gamut of tribal studies has contributed to the origin and growth of the discipline of anthropology to a great extent. Over the period of times, the discipline has also got diversified surrounding themes and communities pertaining to the tribe. However, the importance of the study of tribes has not been abridged with the diversification of the discipline of anthropology. But the interdisciplinary nature in the study have been escalating and evolving what we considered as tribal studies, mainly in development perspectives. The various initiatives have been taken to a comprehensive exploration of the dynamics of tribal studies. The strength of the tribal studies originated from the growing implication and emerging attention to the distinct analytical issues and empirical findings in the field of tribal studies. However, tribal studies will broaden the scope among the NGO activists, planners, bureaucrats and social scientists in general and the students of tribal studies in particular to practice through the expanding functions of knowledge in the realm and in contextualizing the dynamics of perspectives and methodological issues. Now let us look at what are the challenges due to the impact of globalization. The tribals have also become victims of the process and they are trying to cope with various kinds of problems on their own. It has been realized that the tribal folk need assistance from the professionals who could help them in adjusting with the situation. There are still some important issues which needs to be addressed. They are proper orientation about the challenges arising due to globalization to the social scientist in general and the social worker in particular. Dissemination of information, issues about tribals and involve the development of professionals for interventions. The impact of globalization to the tribal society, recognition of tribal studies as a discipline in the realm of social science under the University Grant Commission. The growth of the tribal studies as a discipline has a tough task ahead in the era of globalization. It had a long association with the anthropologists and now it has emerged as interdisciplinary in character, which tends to be a major threat. Now to conclude, the tribal study is a new discipline in the realm of social sciences. It has its origin in social anthropology and association with since its inception. Over a period of time, it has emerged as an interdisciplinary concept, but the need of independent discipline has been conceived for its proper growth and development. The core areas from various social sciences disciplines have been adopted to strengthen its knowledge in the form of academician. It clarifies various concepts about the scheduled tribes and indigenous people, the study of their culture, social structure, polity, economic system, education, etc. It has also been addressed through the research from the field. The salient features of tribal studies are objectivity, precision, design and verifiability. It has also highlighted its broad nature and scope of the tribal studies. The study also enriches the field of social and cultural anthropology, but over a period of time. It has established its independent field of study. The outline has also been drawn to its relevance in today's context and taken various emerging challenges as a discipline. So I hope learners, we have gone through this unit in detail and I hope you would be going through the learning material as well as watching the videos. So thank you so much.